Part 8. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 71. Binghua's move was beyond the expectations of the middle-aged male angel. You must know that the flame-level weapon is extremely sharp and can easily cut open the body of the super soldier. But now, Binghua is holding the sword with his bare hands, and his palm is still unscathed. But what the middle-aged male angel didn't know was that the army-breaking armor on Binghua's body was made of materials from flame-level weapons. It was not surprising that he could hold the cross-blade. But before the middle-aged male angel could think more, his head was hit by the giant sword in Binghua's hand, and he felt his head buzzing. When the male angel woke up, he only heard the sound of slurping, and he found that two flaming swords had penetrated his chest from behind. You must know that this is a battlefield, and there are many guardian angels around who are paying attention to the fighting situation here. After seeing this powerful middle-aged angel being hit by the Legion commander's sword and being stunned, the other guardian angels naturally would not give up such a good opportunity. He stabbed the middle-aged male angel directly from behind with a flaming sword, turning him into a corpse. Blood welled up from his throat. The middle-aged angel looked at Binghua, whose face was covered by a mask, and reluctantly stretched out his palms as if to grab something. But the flaming sword's suppression of the super gene and its destructive ability had begun to take effect. The middle-aged male angel felt that his power was rapidly passing away, and in the end he could only fall into eternal darkness with his unwillingness. Binghua let go of the sword he was holding in his left hand, looking a little regretful that he couldn't compete with this middle-aged male angel. However, although Binghua felt a little regretful, she did not blame the two first-level guard angels for the sneak attack. Instead, she verbally praised them. Because war is like this, it is never a matter of one person, and if it were not for the help of two guardian angels, Binghua estimated that it would take some time for him to defeat the opponent. And during this period, how many female angels will die at the hands of male angels due to their own willfulness? As a commander, Binghua still knows the importance. Your general is dead. Surrender now and put down your weapons. I will save you from death. If anyone refuses to surrender, kill. The giant sword in Binghua's hand once again turned into a sword and spear more than 2 meters long. Binghua directly used the tip of the spear to pick up the body of the middle-aged male angel, raised it in the air and shouted loudly towards the surrounding battlefield. After Binghua's shout spread throughout the battlefield, the sound of weapons clashing in the palace suddenly stopped, and the battlefield instantly fell into silence. Don't listen to this woman's nonsense. They will still kill us after we surrender. A male angel captain holding a cross sword tightly shouted, but the next moment he shut his mouth forever. The cross sword that Binghua held in her left hand was thrown out with great force, breaking through his chainmail and plunging into the chest of the male angel who spoke out. And this wasn't the end yet. Then, a nearby guardian angel flying in the air swooped in at high speed, swung the flaming sword in his hand and struck a fatal blow, and a big head rose into the sky. If anyone else has any objections, I can help them. Binghua still maintained the posture of throwing the sword with one hand and holding the corpse with the gun in the other hand, but the murderous intent in his words could be clearly felt by any male angel present. In the end, some people put down their weapons and surrendered. After the first one, there was a second one. Soon all the hundreds of male angels still alive in the palace put down their weapons. It's easy to understand why the male angels surrendered, because they had no chance of victory. Not to mention the more than 800 elite guard angels in the palace, there are thousands of female angel warriors surrounding it. The war ended suddenly. The male angels who surrendered soon were escorted out of the metal palace by female angels. After being dispersed, they were guarded by hundreds of female angels. Binghua took off his helmet to reveal his face, passed through the female angel who was cleaning the battlefield, and came to the high platform in the innermost part of the palace. Then he turned around and sat directly on the only metal seat here. Hurry! Don't dawdle! Several guardian angels pushed the two male angels into the metal palace, past their companions who were cleaning the battlefield on the way, and stopped a few meters away from Binghua, who was reaching out and stroking the armrest of the metal seat. Don't expect the beautiful female angels to behave politely. As enemies who were fighting to death just now, they treated the captured male angels very roughly and directly pushed him to the ground. Legion Commander, the two highest-ranking male angels who surrendered have been brought here. Binghua then turned his attention from the carving details on the metal seat and looked at the two male angels who were pushed to the ground a few meters away. I have a few questions to ask you. Before the war started, did your general send a request for help to Mir Star? After the two male angels who were pinned to the ground looked at each other, the thinner of them spoke carefully in a low voice. Reporting to the female angel, the commander immediately sent a message requesting support after detecting your celestial battleship. Then Binghua casually asked a few questions about the distribution of angels on Hal Star and some common questions, and then waved his hand to take them down. The current angel population of Hal Star is approximately more than 400,000, of which hundreds of thousands of female angels live here, but their living conditions are not very good. Although he is not like a slave in Tiancheng, his social status is still at the bottom. So Binghua immediately ordered that 4,000 people be transferred from the Legion, led by 41st level guard angels, to release dark information wide area announcements throughout the HAL planet. The general content of the announcement is, HAL Star has been under the jurisdiction of the Sky Sword Legion, and all previous HAL Star laws are invalid. From today on, all female angels will receive the same freedoms and rights as male angels, and this right will be maintained by the new rulers of this planet, the Skyward Sword Legion. Anyone who disobeys will be put to death. At the end, there is a message that the Heavenly Sword Legion is recruiting soldiers, and the only requirement for registration is that they are female angels. This is roughly the meaning mentioned above. Of course, some people jumped out to object. These people are some male angel families on the planet HAL. These people will not be able to accept the news of the substitution for a while, and of course their end will be very bad. Because Binghua had no intention of seeking stability, as a commander of a legion, she was not willing to waste time arguing with these guys. Those who disobeyed were directly ordered to be executed by legionnaires, and then their homes were ransacked, not even a sword being spared. All useful items were removed. Just a few hours later, the situation on HAL Star has initially stabilized, but if you want to develop a large number of soldiers, this time is not enough. Those female angels who were used to being bullied by male angels were now looking at this army of female angels who came from nowhere with an uneasy mood, and were not used to the change in their own rights. After cleaning the battlefield and tallying up the captured data, Binghua felt that his visit to Star HAL was not in vain. A total of more than 20 flame-level weapons were seized, as well as countless alloy war spears and various resources. As long as these things are returned to the Tianjian base and smelted and recast, they can be converted into the Legion's combat effectiveness in real time. All of this obtained at this moment is predicated on Binghua annihilating the army of male angels from Mir Star who came to support him. Only when this premise is met can the resources on HAL Star belong to the Heavenly Sword Legion. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 72. While the Heavenly Sword Legion patrolled the entire planet HAL and suppressed some rebellious male angels, Binghua was not idle either. Binghua found the dark information database in the male angels station, and used Tianren's computing power to forcibly crack and read the information. Most of what he got were the troop deployment orders from a long time ago, as well as the markings of precious mineral deposits on the major planets in the HAL star system, and of course what Binghua was most interested in was the location of the jump navigation node in the HAR star system. After initially stabilizing the situation on HAL star, Binghua reboarded the Skyblade without stopping, leaving only 3,000 female angels and 10 first-level guardian angels who were not in good condition to stay on HAL star to prevent the regeneration of male angels on the planet. Trouble. The Skyblade battleship, which was originally suspended above the HAL Star Male Angel Legion station, began to rise after Binghua's arrangement was completed. The huge Skyblade was just like when it came, once again splitting the sea of clouds in the sky into two halves and flew out of the atmosphere. After arriving in space, the Skyblade flew to the Male Angel jump route node of the HAL Star system at its fastest speed, and reconnected with the Skyblade where Angel Ran and Angel Lan were parked at the edge of the HAL Star system. Are you two ready? I found the location of the jump navigation node in the Male Angel database on the planet HAL. Binghua sat on the throne and did not look at the two girls Ran and Lan in the projection. He was busy modifying a new driving algorithm of his, but this did not hinder the communication between the girls. Legion Commander, will the enemy lose contact with the HAL Star and not use this jump node? There is no need to worry. The jump node is just a coordinate for positioning to prevent missing the target during the jump voyage. As long as we stay nearby, we will not lose anything even if the reinforcements from Mir Star do not come. Binghua Angel Ran explained, and then stored the modified and perfected mysterious driving algorithm in his own dark plane. Actually, it's a good idea that the Male Angel from Mir Star doesn't come, so that the sisters can make less sacrifices. Okay, I shouldn't say this. Now let's start the strategic deployment. Ran, let your Skyblade reach the left position of the node. Lan, you go to the right position, and I will be responsible for facing the enemy from the front. If the fleet supporting HAL Star appears, we will attack them from three sides. Before that, we must fully charge the main guns, and as soon as they appear, we will give them a hard blow. In the outer circle of the HAL Star system, 3 Skyblades were parked in the universe in 3 directions, seemingly waiting for something. The female angel warriors staying on the 3 Skyblades are taking the time to rest, because there will be a big battle in the future. Binghua also took the opportunity to combine his electric energy conversion algorithm and derivation formula into one, simplifying it into a lightning drive algorithm, and then transmitted it to Ran and Lan, as well as all the first-level guard angels under his command. However, it is estimated that Ran and the others will not be able to use them in this battle, because such a short period of time is not enough for them to master the ability to fight with lightning-driven algorithms. A flash of silver light suddenly appeared in the dark universe, directly from the HAL Star system. The silver light suddenly dispersed in a flash, revealing a hundreds-meter-long medieval warship-style spaceship inside. But before the people on the ship could explore the surrounding environment, a bright orange beam of light suddenly shot out, directly penetrating the shield outside the warship and piercing the spacecraft. Violent fire broke out in this ancient warship that was several hundred meters tall. The crew on the ship were swallowed up by the raging explosion before they had time to escape. The arrival of this medieval warship seemed to be a signal. Continuous silver rays of light shot from the depths of the universe, revealing medieval warship-style spacecraft of different sizes inside. This was the Male Angel reinforcements that came to support the HAL Star. Because the celestial warships were mobilized by the King of Heavenly War to attack Huaya, the Angel Army could only use jump navigation to rush over to support. But as soon as they arrived at the transition node of the HAL Star system, they were greeted by extremely fierce artillery fire. A medieval battleship that was several times larger than all the surrounding spaceships appeared and immediately set up an extremely solid energy shield, temporarily blocking the intensive firepower. The shuttle-shaped energy bombs, which were as dense as raindrops, were fired from the position of the 3 Skyblades towards the fleet that had just appeared. The firepower continued to bombard out, and every 2 minutes there was a Skyblade main cannon shot that penetrated several warships in a line. Binghua's arrangement worked successfully, and the Male Angel fleet from HAL Star, which came to support, ran into his ambush circle as expected. Now the opponent was so disoriented due to the sudden attack that it had no time to deploy its fleet. Hundreds of warships were crowded together and were severely beaten by 3 Skyblades. How come there are 3 celestial battleships? Didn't the report say there was only one? At this moment, he was in the largest battleship in the middle of the male angel fleet that was beaten by the Skyblade. The commander of this army of tens of thousands roared angrily. A male angel who was controlling something in the light screen projection stood up and loudly reported. Reporting to the general, the detection around the fleet has been completed. There are 3 enemy celestial warships attacking our fleet, but there are no other units. The male angel known as the general stood up, his anger at being attacked was forcibly suppressed, and he began to take over command of the fleet. Now the fleet will spread out immediately and hit the enemy ship directly ahead with firepower. This general's idea is very simple. Since I am surrounded by you, I will attack directly and see how you can surround me. The moment the crowded fleet of male angels dispersed, Binghua, who was sitting on the heavenly blade, saw it. Did you react? You still want to surround me from my side, but you think too simply. Binghua whispered to himself, and then gave orders to the female angel below who controlled the Skyblade battleship system. Put up the Skyblade shield for me, and when the main gun is fully charged, shoot directly at the densest part of the enemy fleet. I want him to not be able to get here. Also contact me with Angel Ran and Angel Lan. Now that the enemy is attracted to me, ask them to attack me fiercely from behind. After the medieval warship-style warships dispersed, the loss rate immediately slowed down a lot, and then under the command, they concentrated their firepower to bombard the Skyblade directly in front. As for the Heavenly Blade, a celestial battleship, you can say it is bulky and its attack power is not strong, but the only thing you cannot say about it is its defensive capabilities. The huge size of the celestial battleship provides the shield with super energy endurance. The male angel's battleship fired countless beams, which could only splash layers of ripples on the shield, but it could not break the layer outside the Skyblade. Turtle shell. Although one shot of the dense dark energy railgun mounted on the Skyblade could not break through the shield of the male angel battleship, under the concentrated fire of multiple doors, from time to time a small or medium-sized battleship exploded into a ball of fire. Coupled with the fact that Tianren's stellar energy main gun occasionally refreshes its presence, the number of casualties among the male angel fleet group has been rising. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 73. The fierce battleship firefight continued until the male angel fleet rushed to the shield held up by Binghua's Skyblade. Then in the fleet group where the male angel was located, warships hundreds of meters long came forward, supporting their own shields and colliding with the shield of the Skyblade, cancelling each other out. The shield of Tianren only trembled slightly, but there were too many battleships that could not hold up the male angel. This scene is like a replica of the flagship of the Heavenly Sword Legion in the battle on Mellow Star. At that time, the flagship of the Heavenly Sword Legion was surrounded by 2 Tiangong flagships, and the shield was completely worn down to overload. The situation now is very similar to that then, but today's Heavenly Sword Legion is not comparable to that then, and the enemy is not Huaye's Heavenly Palace army. All the guarding angels on the flagship will attack with me. The battlefield command of the Heavenly Sword Legion will be temporarily handed over to Angel Ran. After Binghua finished shouting the wide area dark message, he walked out of the command room and walked outside. As the strongest single combat force of the Sky Sword Legion, it would be a waste if he stayed in the command room all the time. At this moment, Binghua, who was wearing broken armor, had only one target, and that was the large flagship in the middle of the enemy fleet. From the outside, the Skyblade looks like a sharp sword hanging upside down, but in the next moment, the Skyblade looks like an aircraft carrier, and countless female angel warriors spurt out from various exits on the Skyblade like carrier-based aircraft. As if there was a tacit understanding between male and female angels, the male angel warship, which was using the ship's shield to kill the Skyblade shield, also began to release the angel warriors it carried. At this time, a heavenly blade battleship came over from the left and right sides of the male angel fleet at the same time. The intensive artillery fire kept tilting, and at the same time, it released the tens of thousands of female angel warriors carried on it. Attention angel teams, the combat teams on the left and right wings form an arc to surround the enemy fleet. Cover the Legion commander for the frontal assault. Angel ran ordered in the communication, and the originally countless female angels immediately began to form a rough formation in the universe. Tens of thousands of female angel warriors on the left and right wings of the male angel fleet formed a large net covering the sky, covering the male angels who had just come out of the battleship. In front of where Binghua was, Binghua led his elite guarding angels to form an arrow and pierce the defensive formation formed by the male angels in a hurry. The remaining ordinary female angel warriors took the opportunity to follow Binghua to charge, widening the gap in the enemy's formation, and formed a small team of 5 combat units. One of them commanded and coordinated, and the other 4 covered each other to attack and suppress the male angels who had been separated from the formation. However, the escorting angel troops led by Binghua did not stop charging and continued to move forward, because the arrows were composed of second-generation warriors, which caused the male angel troops intercepted along the way to be easily torn apart like paper. Binghua's goal has been clear from the beginning, that is, the enemy's flagship. As long as the remaining male angels break through the enemy's flagship, they will not be afraid. The thick 100-meter orange-red light beam, exuding a high temperature that could burn the entire space, passed over the charging Binghua, destroying all obstacles in its shooting trajectory, and opened the way for Binghua to lead to the enemy's flagship. This was ordered by Binghua long before she left the Skyblade battleship, to clear the way for her at the critical moment. And Tianren was no less a celestial battleship. The firing trajectory was calculated extremely accurately. It avoided hundreds of Binghua's group and accurately bombarded the enemy's flagship shield. Maybe there is a reason for being the flagship of the male angel. After receiving a rough stellar energy ray from the Skyblade, the shield of the battleship still stood there firmly. Judging from the way it flickers and trembles, it should be reaching its power limit soon. At this moment, Binghua rushed to the enemy's flagship, but was blocked by the energy shield. However, Binghua and Hexi had thought of a solution to this situation long before this war. The angel carrying the energy-breaking dagger comes forward, and other angels cover. Binghua incited the wings behind him to retreat, raised his sword and gun and ordered, while at the same time activating a special energy-driven algorithm in his dark plane that he had been modifying before. Binghua didn't need to worry about the detailed actions. Dozens of first-level guard angels spread out, holding flaming swords to protect the perimeter. In the middle, a dozen female angels holding daggers more than 30 centimeters long with complex sacred language codes engraved on them flapped their wings and quickly approached the translucent blue energy shield. As these dozen female guarding angels thrust their daggers into the translucent blue shield, the surface of the energy shield began to fluctuate violently. And those daggers that pierced the energy shield seemed to have pierced an entity. Even if the hand holding the dagger was released, it would still be suspended there. The only thing that changed was that the sacred language code on the surface of the dagger began to glow, and at the same time, light orange energy waves began to spread on the shield. Binghua held up the sword and gun in her hand, and the light within a dozen meters around her began to dim rapidly. She felt as if she was in a barren space in the universe without any starlight. The sacred language code has been imported, the stellar energy driving algorithm has started running, and the surrounding stellar energy data is now calculated. Binghua's eyes were closed behind the metal mask that covered his face, and all his attention was focused on his dark plane. The stellar energy drive algorithm has been started successfully, energy gathering, energy gathering. The gene engine's sound was like reading a message, making Binghua feel that time passed extremely long. But in the outside world, as the light around Binghua dimmed, the front edge of the sword and gun she held high began to glow with a blazing orange light. Although this color is eye-catching, it is also very common. This scorching color can be seen in various galaxies, because it is the color of the violent burning of the star's surface. After studying for hundreds of years, star-driven knowledge and various data quickly flashed in Binghua's mind, and all the research came to fruition at this moment. From this moment on, the most common and destructive energy in the universe will be controlled by Binghua and become one of her means of attack. Even though they were separated by a layer of thick armor, Binghua could still vaguely feel the burning heat coming from the sword and gun in his hand. The violence contained in the glaring orange light in his perception and the danger of exploding at any time reminded Binghua. She can only achieve simple aggregation of this energy, far from controlling it, or even controlling it. In the short 2 minutes it took for Binghua's experiment to gather stellar energy, the last obstacle standing in front of him was announced to have been overcome. The translucent blue energy shield began to decompose and dissipate under the interference algorithm of the energy-breaking dagger, revealing a gap of more than 10 meters. Without Binghua's order, the female angels gathered near the gap quickly poured in from the gap, but as soon as they entered, the guarding angels were greeted by a dense volley of artillery fire. When the female angels gathered outside the shield to break it, the male angels staying in the flagship were not blind. Although they could not attack due to the shield, it did not mean that they could not aim in advance. Now, as soon as the female angels poured in from the gap, the energy cannons that had been aimed at the side started firing in unison. All guardian angels, spread out around and don't block my route. Binghua's colleague yelled in the dark communication channel, and pointed the tip of the gun, which was dyed with a glaring orange light in the front half of his hand, at the enemy flagship ahead. Then the wings behind him were vigorously fanned, and he rushed towards the enemy's flagship as fast as possible. The abnormal defensive power of the army-breaking armor on his body allowed Binghua Liao to ignore the beam cannon intercepted along the way. With a loud swaying sound, Binghua's whole body fell like a meteorite, directly knocking out a dent of more than 10 meters in the armor of Male Angel's flagship, and the sword and gun in his hand penetrated into the battleship's armor effortlessly. A little dizzy, Binghua directly cancelled the restriction on the star energy on the sword and gun, and felt a clarity in his mind. However, on the armor of the battleship in front of him, streaks of scorching light were spreading crazily around him. Something happened at noon today, so I didn't update. I'll make it up tonight. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 74. Binghua quickly drew out his sword and gun and incited his wings to retreat quickly, because the dense orange cracks had now spread over a pit area of more than 10 meters, and were still spreading to the surroundings. What's more, the burning orange light in the cracks is getting stronger and stronger, and it seems that a giant lava beast is about to escape from the armor. Binghua retreated dozens of meters before stopping. The next moment, the armor of the flagship with countless burning orange cracks suddenly exploded, and a storm-like orange light swept around. The orange light is nothing else, but the vast stellar energy emitted over a wide area by the star at the center of the HAL star system that was previously gathered by the ice bloom. Of course, only a tiny amount of the ice flower gathered together, but even the power of the explosion directly melted the nearly 100 meters of outer armor in the middle of the Male Angel's flagship. Needless to say, the outer armor of the flagship of the God-making civilization is so hard that even the main guns of ordinary aerospace-grade civilization's battleships cannot penetrate it. Binghua held the sword and spear for a while, but did not choose to gather energy again because it took too long. And if the sacred language created by Kesha had not simplified the algorithm formula, Binghua estimated that with the amount of calculations of his second-generation warrior, it would take at least 5 or 6 minutes to complete the energy gathering. And this is amazing enough. You must know that the main gun of the Skyblade battleship is also loaded with a stellar energy drive formula to gather the stellar energy around the battleship, and then roughly condense it into a line and launch it out, but this takes about a minute. Calculation time. It only took Binghua 2 minutes to complete the gathering of stars. Of course, the power of the two was not at the same level. Seeing the billowing smoke, The outer armor melted away by the ultra-high temperature, and the large hole in the exposed internal structure of the ship's hull, Binghua flew in without any further hesitation. As soon as he entered the battleship, Binghua felt something strange, because the passage inside the battleship was very smooth, just like the inside of the Skyblade. There are no pipes and various lines that Binghua saw when he broke into the Angel-affiliated civilization battleship before. But it only took Binghua a moment to figure out the reason. The technology of aerospace-level civilization was more focused on mechanical technology. After reaching the level of God-making civilization, complex mechanical technology and energy transmission were simplified to the point where ordinary civilizations could not believe it. Just like a super soldier like Binghua, his body has a genetic engine comparable to a supercomputer, which can expose his body to the vacuum of the universe. If an aerospace-level civilization wants to achieve the same effect, it must wear a bulky power armor, undergo body modification surgery, and implant an electronic brain, but even this cannot reach the level of a super soldier. While Binghua was thinking about these thoughts in his mind, more than 20 male angels had already flown out from the corner of the passage. "Come on! Kill the intruder!" A male angel ordered, and the following dozen male angels holding spears responded loudly, inciting their wings to move forward. But what they didn't know was who was the person who broke into the ship alone, otherwise they wouldn't have rushed forward so hastily. "Coming so soon? But this time I don't plan to fight you slowly. I will deal with you directly and destroy this battleship," Binghua said to himself. Then he raised his sword and gun, and a harsh electric sound sounded. Then Binghua stepped on the ground and turned into an afterimage with electric light and rushed out. With an explosion and a harsh electric sound, the male angel who rushed forward was knocked away by 7 or 8 people on the spot. He stepped forward hard, leaving a deep footprint on the metal ground to stop his forward body. With the explosive arc of ice, he flipped his sword and gun and swept out a large semicircle. Of course, the male angel soldiers who were suddenly paralyzed by electric shocks could not react, and their necks were cut with swords and guns in an instant. After the attack, Binghua turned to the left, his blue cloak raised and swung behind him, and he thrust his sword and gun forward, piercing the chest of the last male angel still standing. In just a moment, more than a dozen male angels who rushed up were seriously injured and died. Only 3 male angels were left standing there alone. However, Binghua didn't let them wait too long. He shook off the corpse on the weapon and lifted the sword and gun still entangled with the electric snake. Several lightning streams formed by the entanglement of the electric snakes shot out. The 3 male angels were electrified by the violent current on the spot. They were not second-generation angels. They were electrified by the huge current and fell to the ground black and black. If they don't get timely treatment, I believe these male angels injured by the lightning radiated by Binghua will not survive for long. After Binghua finished dealing with this wave of enemies, he did not choose to continue rushing in, but raised his sword and gun again. The stellar energy driving formula has been successfully restarted and energy collection has begun. Energy collection is in progress. Boom! A huge explosion sounded in the male angel's flagship, this time not from the outside, but from the inside. This explosion inside the ship directly shocked the fleet commander who was sitting on the bridge and the commander of this army of tens of thousands of male angels. What happened? The strong male angel with a somewhat fierce face and a light beard on his chin shouted and asked. "Report to General Sokka that an enemy has invaded the main ship. No news has come back from the soldiers we sent to annihilate the enemy." A male angel who was sitting on a chair and staring at the various data projected in front of him replied. The muscles on Sokka's fierce face trembled, and then he cursed angrily. "If there is no news, why don't you tell me earlier? Destroy the invading enemy as soon as possible. If she continues to explode like this battleship will be scrapped sooner or later." Boom! The destructive burning orange energy containing terrifying high temperature exploded again, causing almost devastating damage to the interior of the battleship. Among them, Binghua also saw dozens of male angel soldiers who were affected by the explosion, but at this moment they all turned into ashes and disappeared in the blazing orange light of the explosion. It has been blown up so many times and it still doesn't blow up. Let's try to store more energy this time. Binghua thought that she would do the same thing. She raised her sword and gun high again, and began to recalculate the stellar energy drive algorithm in her mind, gathering the surrounding stellar energy. Binghua did not go deep into the battleship, but stayed at the hole she blew out at the beginning. After using star energy to drive Binghua several times, he discovered a shortcoming and advantage of star energy aggregation. Binghua had previously conducted a gathering of stellar energy inside a battleship, and found that the speed of gathering could be described as a turtle speed. Then Binghua came to the space close to the universe, where the big hole she had blasted had been, and found that the speed of gathering stellar energy had accelerated several times. From these two phenomena, ice blooms have learned the advantages and disadvantages of star aggregation. This technology is relatively limited by environmental constraints. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 75. The accumulation of stellar energy continued, and increasingly bright orange light converged on the sword and gun in Binghua's hand. During this period, no other male angels came to disturb Binghua, because there were hundreds of guardian angels protecting her outside the hole in the battleship on Binghua's back. Binghua did not waste this precious time and kept bombarding the interior of male angel's flagship. But this time, before Binghua could gather the stellar energy again, a passing shadow came straight towards her. With a loud bang, Binghua flew backwards and hit the twisted metal bulkhead, almost completely sinking into it. Where Binghua was originally, there was currently a strong male angel with a fierce face and a beard floating in the air. This was none other than the male angel Commander Sokka, who was sitting on the flagship. And unlike the chain armor worn by ordinary male angels, the armor on Sokka is heavy armor that is more defensive. The shoulders are shoulder armor that looks like an unknown ferocious beast with a lion's head, and the chest is a silver plate armor that reflects the cold light. There are thick-looking metal leggings and arm guards on both arms and legs. Even the upper arms and abdomen that are not wearing armor are protected by silver-woven soft armor. I'm too lazy to pay attention to you. You're addicted to bombing. Sokka spoke condescendingly, and Binghua jumped out of the humanoid pit he had smashed. He looked at Sokka floating above and asked, "Are you a third-generation warrior?" Binghua's confused question made Sokka's eyebrows rise, but Binghua still answered. "Sokka, commander of the 5th Legion under King Tianzhan, a third-generation warrior." When Sokka said this, there was a hint of arrogance in his tone, then he raised his knife and pointed at Binghua below and shouted, "Invading the HAL galaxy under the rule of King Tianzhan, you deserve to be executed." Binghua ignored Sokka's shout above his head, stretched out his hand to grasp the handle of the sword and gun stuck in the metal ground, pulled it out with a creak, and whispered at the same time, "Finally I met the third-generation super soldier. Now I can finally play the true role of the army breaking armor." After saying this in a low voice, Binghua raised his head and stared at Sokka, and at the same time issued an order in the secret channel of the Sky Sword Legion. "All guarding angels stay away from the enemy's flagship, follow Angel Rand's orders, and cooperate with other sisters to clear out all male angel soldiers." Just as Binghua finished issuing the order, Sokka suddenly swooped in from above. His speed was extremely fast, but he was still within Binghua's reaction range. Quickly jumping back, the broad silver sword fell from Binghua's eyes and sank into the metal armor beneath his feet like it was cutting tofu. Binghua flicked his sword and spear with his wrist, and the cold light penetrated the space and pierced forward. However, Sokka's thick arm holding the sword just raised, and the broadsword blocked the incoming spear tip like a shield. Then Sokka lowered his body to avoid the tip of the spear, and while stepping forward, he turned his sword over, and the shining blade slid along the sword and gun held in Binghua's hand and slashed towards Binghua's chest. The change of moves at this moment was too fast, and Binghua had no time to retreat and dodge. This was the difference in hardware between the second-generation warriors and the third-generation warriors. Seeing that he couldn't avoid it, Binghua simply stopped hiding. He raised his right foot and stepped heavily on the ground, only to hear an explosion. Spiderweb-shaped lightning flashed around with Binghua's right foot as the center. Sokka's movements were undetectable, and then became even faster. But it was this insignificant meal that allowed Binghua to complete an action, which was to draw a gun and slash. There was a loud bang. Binghua's breastplate was struck by the silver sword, and the extremely terrifying force forced her to slide back several meters, causing a burst of sparks to rub against the ground with her feet. Sokka kept swinging the knife sideways, moved his eyes downward, and saw a slight scratch on the soft armor on his abdomen. The moment Sokka struck Binghua with his sword, Binghua's sword and spear also slashed out. It was a life-for-life style of play. But in the end, it was Sokka's sword that struck Binghua first. The tip of the sword and gun held by Binghua barely scratched the soft metal armor on Sokka's abdomen. The two were about 10 meters apart. Although the fight just now seemed complicated, it actually happened in an instant. Binghua lowered her head and looked at her chest and was overjoyed, because a shallow slash mark more than 20 centimeters long suddenly appeared on her breastplate. If it weren't for the broken army armor, Sokka's sword attack just now would have seriously injured Binghua. Compared to Binghua's rejoicing, Sokka just frowned. He had not let off any steam just now, and there should be no armor in the angel civilization that the flame-level sword in his hand could not cut through. However, Sokka didn't think for too long. Since he couldn't cut it open, he should use stronger force to cut it open. After Sokka stood up straight, he activated the dark energy drive algorithm in the gene engine with a thought, and then a thin orange flame that was slightly dark inside covered the flame-level sword in Sokka's hand. Binghua's eyes were focused and he didn't care about it. He held the gun in one hand and stretched out his left hand, and the shield matching the Pajun armor was carried out. The anti-third generation super soldier armor components manufactured by Binghua specifically to fight against the third generation super soldiers finally came to light at this moment. The wings on Sokka's back fanned his body into the air, and the next moment he leaned forward and rushed forward. The flame-level sword blessed with dark energy in his hand mercilessly slashed at Binghua's head. Hyuka's speed is not as fast as the third generation super soldier Sokka, let alone wearing heavy armor, although the weight of this heavy armor is nothing to her. Binghua's legs were spread apart in a splay, and his knees were slightly bent to raise the shield above his head, ready to withstand the impact. The charging Sokka looked very confident in his attack, and the sword still followed the original trajectory and struck the shield held by Binghua. Boom! A transparent wave spread violently with the sword and shield as the center, and then the area of more than 10 meters on the metal ground beneath Binghua suddenly dented. As the dark energy blessing the sword in Sokka's hand exploded, an extremely terrifying counter-shock force acted on both Binghua and Sokka. The shield held by Binghua was almost thrown away, but Binghua, who had long been prepared to withstand the impact, did not panic at all. Binghua flipped his right arm forward and pushed it forward, and the sword and gun hidden behind the shield flew towards Sokka, who was also flying in the air. In the air, Sokka's right arm holding the knife was numb from the shock. Silver light flashed in his sight. He felt a pain in his abdomen and his body was carried backwards by a strong force. Because of the excellent shock-absorbing ability of Pajun armor, Binghua regained control of his body first. Binghua opened his right hand and used a micro-wormhole to transport a flaming sword, and then the dancing lightning immediately clung to the sword body, emitting a dazzling blue light. Binghua flexed his legs and tightened his muscles, and used all his strength to land on the ground. The wings behind him turned into a white afterimage and rushed straight towards Sokka. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifen Si Wang. Chapter 76. The wings on Sokka's back fluttered to stop his body from flying upside down. The soft armor on his abdomen had been cut open by the sword and gun that had just been rotated and hit, revealing a 10-centimeter long wound inside it. Before Sokka could observe the surrounding situation, an after-image dragging blue light rushed towards him. Sokka only had time to raise his left arm to block the door in front of him. The next moment he felt a strong cutting force coming from him, and his left arm that was blocking the door in front of him also felt pain. The flaming sword in Binghua's hand that had just scratched Sokka's arm guard raised the blade high and turned, ready to strike again. But Sokka's originally fierce face showed an extremely obvious look of anger. As a third-generation super soldier, he was frequently injured by a female angel. Ignoring the left arm that was still bleeding after the arm guard was cut open, Sokka reached out and grabbed Binghua's right wrist, which was holding the sword, and fell. Binghua tried to struggle, but it felt like his right wrist was clamped by a hydraulic clamp and he couldn't move. Sokka kept moving, raising the sword with his right hand. This time he did not choose to attack Binghua's chest, but stabbed him hard in the abdomen. The sound was like a heavy hammer hitting steel, followed by a circle of exploding energy. Binghua's whole body bowed backwards into a C shape, but because Sokka grabbed Binghua's right wrist, Binghua couldn't fly backwards. Even with the shock absorption of the Pajun armor, Binghua still felt as if he had been punched hard in the abdomen. His upper and lower teeth were clenched, and his dark eyes were staring closely at Sokka, who had a blurry double image in front of him through the mask. At this moment, Binghua's eyes were filled with a kind of flame called obsession. The only thing Binghua has done in the past 10 years is to study the weapons of the anti-3 generation warriors, and this broken military armor is exactly for this purpose. Now facing Sokka is Binghua's long-term target, the third-generation super soldier of Male Angel, just like the rising sun he met in the battle on Star Marrow. Binghua doesn't want to lose again, doesn't want to lose to Suri, doesn't want to lose to Male Angels, doesn't want to watch Male Angels slaughter female angels, doesn't want to see familiar or close people die in front of him. And now, the scene where tens of thousands of the Sky Sword Legion companions on Marrow Star have fallen will be staged again. If no one stops the third-generation warriors of the Male Angels, then waiting for the female angels will be a tragedy repeated. On the battlefield, a third-generation super soldier with free hands can easily tear through the defense formed by thousands of first-generation warriors. Even for the more than 100 first-level guardian angels who have been promoted to the second generation, facing the attack of a third-generation super soldier, it is only a matter of time before they retreat. But now, the only one in the entire Tianjian Legion who can fight against the third-generation super warriors without dying is Binghua, who wears armor that breaks the army. Isn't it just painful? Isn't it just a beating? These are nothing compared to the final victory. Binghua roared in his heart, and the double image in his vision immediately faded away. After all, super warriors are not pure living organisms. The residual image in his vision is ultimately due to Binghua's psychological problem. The root cause was his lack of confidence in whether he could defeat the third-generation super soldier, and his lack of confidence in the idea of ambush the Male Angel reinforcements. After all, Binghua is just an ordinary female angel who has practiced swordsmanship for decades more than ordinary angels and learned a little more high-end knowledge. Normally he wouldn't see anything, but when he was hit, Binghua would naturally doubt his ability to lead the Heavenly Sword Legion. But now Binghua has finally transcended the worries hidden deep in her heart and abandoned all of this behind her mind. She only has one idea now, which is to kill the third-generation super soldier Sokka in front of her. Binghua suddenly raised his left leg, the sacred language inscription on the combat boots lit up, and lightning wrapped around it. Then his right leg was sharply thrust towards Sokka's flank, and at the same time his left arm was bent forward and followed by his elbow. Sokka's eyes froze, and he had no time to draw his knife to defend himself, but his right arm holding the knife was slightly raised, just in time to block Binghua's combat boots. The lightning exploded like an electric snake, causing the muscles on Sokka's face to twitch slightly and his body to become slightly paralyzed. Before Sokka could recover from the paralysis, Binghua's elbow hit him hard in the face. On the spot, Sokka's face was tilted as he was hit, and his eyes turned to one side, but his instinct as a warrior made him swing the knife. But Binghua just bent his knees and pushed forward. The metal leggings just caught the sword on Sokka. Binghua opened his left hand and placed it under his right wrist. Binghua's right hand holding the sword hilt suddenly let go, and the flaming sword fell directly downwards. The sword hilt was caught by his left hand that had been placed below in advance. Then Binghua held the sword and slashed back. Sokka was entangled with Binghua at this moment, and his hands were occupied. He could only lean back to avoid the slashed flaming sword. In just a few moments, Binghua exchanged offense and defense with Sokka several times. If Binghua hadn't been wearing a full set of military breaking armor, he would have been penetrated by a knife. While Sokka leaned back, he finally let go of the big hand that had been holding Binghua's right wrist. He flapped his wings behind him and prepared to move away from Binghua. Sokka's combat experience reminded him that if he continued to entangle with Binghua, he would definitely suffer a big loss. Sokka wanted to move away from Binghua but disagreed. He flapped his wings and immediately accelerated to get close to him. He slashed rapidly with the flaming sword in his left hand, and a series of staggered red sword lights enveloped Sokka. While Sokka was flying upside down, he also raised his sword to attack the flaming sword, but Binghua swung his sword too fast. After Sokka fought with him several times, he didn't even check the plate armor on his chest and was scratched. Deep sword marks. The sword collided with the flaming sword again, and sparks exploded for a moment. However, this time the ice flower did not break apart at the first touch. Instead, it gritted its teeth and endured the counter-shock force coming from the sword. Just when Sokka thought it was Binghua who made a mistake and slightly raised the corners of his mouth, he felt a stinging pain in his abdomen. The next moment, he felt a corrosive energy unique to a flame-level weapon invade his body. The hand holding the knife shook the ice flower away with force. Sokka looked down and saw that a bright silver dagger had pierced his abdomen at some point. At the same time, the slightly shiny prismatic blue crystal on the sword crocodile showed that this was a short sword with a weapon engine. The moment Binghua landed on the ground, he was half kneeling with his sword on the ground. Even with the armor separating him, you could see the violent rise and fall of his chest. Moreover, there are shallow slash marks on the breastplate, abdominal armor, and leg armor, with a length of about 10 to 20 centimeters. Compared to Binghua, Sokka was in an even worse situation at the moment. He immediately pulled out the flame-level dagger that pierced his abdomen, but even so he was severely injured. The energy emitted by the flame-level weapon is like a virus, eroding Sokka's body, and even starting to fight against its genetic engine inside the body. Of course, ordinary flame-level weapons will not be like this. At most, they can easily cut open the body of a super soldier and interfere with the super soldier's self-healing and recovery abilities. But the trick Binghua had just used to trick Sokka was a high-end product that her father Yoni had given her. A raging dagger with its own weapon engine. This kind of weapon engine is usually only installed on a few raging weapons. Ordinary raging weapons do not have a weapon engine because it is too luxurious. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 77. Binghua rested for a while and then stood up again. Seeing the ugly look on Sokka's face opposite him, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he secretly thanked his father for the self-defense weapon. At the same time, he was also glad that he had not removed the weapon engine from the dagger before and installed it on the flaming sword, otherwise he would not have been able to severely damage Sokka just now. On the other side, Sokka looked ugly. When Binghua was not attacking, he immediately started a self-test on his genetic engine. The final result made him very angry, because the flame-level weapon energy at the wound caused his gene engine to have to allocate part of its computing power for countermeasures. This weakens most of his abilities, especially regarding dark energy drive. If Sokka wanted to activate the dark energy drive at this moment, he would have to stand still and spend time making calculations. He would not be able to complete the calculation of dark energy instantly like he did during the original battle. Sokka looked at Binghua not far away, and his somewhat ferocious face finally showed a trace of dignity, an expression that he would only show when dealing with soldiers of the same level. "Woman, I admit that I shouldn't look down on you because you are a female angel, but that's the end of it." The original Sokka didn't bother to talk to Binghua because he looked down on the so-called female angel army. But now, not only was Binghua in front of him making him a little embarrassed, but the battle situation outside was also very unfavorable for the male angel. Sokka has just received a report from his subordinates. The tens of thousands of angels he brought have suffered heavy losses under the attack of the female angels. Now they only have the ability to defend and are unable to fight back. If this continues, they will be annihilated sooner or later. Sokka held the handle of the knife in front of him with both hands. Although there were several bleeding wounds on his body, he could not erase the heavy aura that emerged around him. Of course, Binghua on the other side would not despise Sokka. The shield she had thrown away before stretched out her left hand and reappeared. She held the flaming sword tightly in her right hand and did not choose to carry out the sword and gun. Because compared to that kind of long weapon, Binghua felt that the flaming sword was more convenient to use when facing enemies that were too fast. The two of them were tens of meters apart, and the angel wings behind them were inciting slightly, and they could suddenly explode towards each other at any time. Seeing that Sokka on the other side did not move, Binghua quickly entered the dark plane. Start the lightning drive algorithm, set the target to the flaming sword, and increase the power value to the maximum. Blue electric light appeared, emitting a harsh electric chirp, and at the same time, the area of more than 1 meter around Binghua was dyed with a layer of dazzling blue light. Seeing this, Sokka secretly said something bad and began to quickly calculate the dark energy drive. Because the gene engine was interfered with, it took him 2 seconds to complete the calculation. The dark energy enveloped the sword in Sokka's hand like a layer of faint flame, and then the angel wings on his back instantly accelerated the frequency of incitement, rushing forward like a stream of flying light. Binghua held the sword of the blazing sun that shone with dazzling electric light. He shouted loudly and leaned forward while blocking the shield in front of him. Sokka's face trembled slightly as he rushed towards him. He was not a fool. He knew he couldn't cut but still punched him upwards. Sokka's forward body suddenly turned around to Binghua's right, and at the same time, the sword in his hand was raised and ready to be swung down at any time. But as soon as he detoured to Binghua's right, Sokka felt a line of sight that couldn't be ignored, and at the same time, he was accompanied by a dazzling electric light that was rapidly approaching. The flaming sword wrapped with dazzling electric light was like a lightning spear that penetrated the space, stabbing straight at Sokka's face. Because of the existence of wings, Binghua's right hand holding the sword just thrust forward with force, and propelled by the angel wings, the whole person sprinted out slightly from the ground. Sokka instantly rolled in the air, and the sword blade shining with dazzling blue lightning almost brushed against his face. Although Sokka successfully avoided the blade, he could only avoid the lightning wrapped around the blade. Feeling the conductor, the lightning instantly crossed the insignificant distance between the two, bringing Sokka into his passionate embrace. Lightning crackled, and Sokka's original counter-attack was temporarily suspended due to paralysis. But in Binghua's eyes, the scene at this moment was like stillness, the jumping arc of electricity, and Sokka's facial muscles twitching slightly due to the electric shock, all of which were clearly taken into account. Seeing that his planned thrust was dodged, Binghua slammed the shield in his left hand forward, and a heavy shield blow immediately hit Sokka's face. Boom! A dull loud noise was heard, and Sokka's entire body was thrown away by Binghua's shield blow while lying in the air. The irregular metal bulkhead that had been melted by stellar energy bombardment was directly hit by the flying Sokka and collapsed deeply. Binghua leaped forward with his shield in hand, raising the flaming sword high. The lightning quickly faded away, and then the sword blade became extremely red, like boiling molten steel. As soon as it hit the ground, the flaming sword in Binghua's hand immediately struck down, but unfortunately it was all gone, leaving only a 1-meter-long cut mark on the metal ground. Sokka rolled to the side to avoid the attack, kicked Binghua back, then rolled back to stand up, let out a roar, held the knife in both hands and dragged it on the ground for a few meters before striking up. Binghua directly moved the shield in front of her. The huge force shook her back, and the shield almost came out of her hands. Binghua gritted his teeth and forcibly stopped his retreating body, moved the shield in front of him, and thrust forward with the flaming sword in his right hand with extraordinary accuracy. The tip of the flaming sword passed through the gap between Sokka's arms and stabbed into the plate armor of Sokka's heart as if it was locked. But as soon as the sword tip penetrated the armor, Sokka reacted and twisted his arms to clamp the sword body, unable to make an inch further. Seeing this, Binghua immediately let go of the hilt of the sword, clenched his right fist and punched it forward fiercely. The sacred code on the arm guard lit up on the way. The next moment, the fist covered with metal armor and glowing with lightning hit Sokka's face hard. Binghua's eyes were filled with faint bloodshot eyes at the moment, like a gambler who lost his sight. Binghua no longer cared about her own defense, nor did she care about damaging her body. She only had one thought at the moment, and that was to attack, and attack again, because as long as she retreated, she would have no chance to fight back. After knocking Sokka back with one punch, Binghua withdrew his hand, held the flaming sword that had not yet landed, and then lifted it up, slashed down, and slashed vertically. Every move is very simple, but they all have one thing in common, that is, they are fast and accurate. The place where each sword cuts is Sokka's neck or heart, no matter how bad it is in the face. This made Sokka very nervous when he blocked, fearing that if he didn't pay attention, he would be disfigured on the spot and his head would be missing. Hyuga learned his swordsmanship from his father, but Yoni had always only taught Hyuga the most basic sword moves, and the rest relied on Hyuga's accumulated practice over time. Therefore, Binghua's swordsmanship is not gorgeous, but rather simple, but this simple swordsmanship has two advantages, that is, speed and accuracy. Binghua can hit any position he wants, stab any point he wants, and can even change his moves temporarily while swinging the sword. I will resume 2 updates tomorrow. I have been obsessed with Thulhu culture in the past 2 days, so the updates are not very effective. Good night. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 78. Exploding fireworks flashed across the battlefield from time to time. This originally empty space was now filled with all kinds of twisted warship wreckage, as well as countless blood-stained corpses of male and female angels. Angel Ran calmly commanded tens of thousands of female angel warriors to divide into 3 directions to encircle and suppress the male angels gathered near the local flagship. In addition, there are hundreds of our own elite guarding angels who are counter-breaking through the male angels' defense line, which makes the battle situation develop in a direction favorable to the Heavenly Sword Legion. Every team should not advance rashly, and alternate cover with surrounding companions to gradually move forward. Each Skyblade warship aims at the male angels gathered together to cover them with firepower, don't let them get back together. Angel Ran kept modifying some commands based on the battlefield conditions in the projection. If the male angels show signs of breaking out, Angel Ran will immediately ask the female angels in that area to gather for defense, and the female angels in other directions will increase their attack intensity. Although it is very simple, it is extremely effective. Today, the remaining thousands of male angels are like a male lion with teeth and claws, and the female angels are the hunters holding spears to surround it. The sharp teeth and claws of the male lion make the hunters holding spears very afraid, fearing that it will bite them regardless of their lives and take away the lives of their companions. At the same time, the male lion was also afraid of the spears surrounding him, for fear that he would be pierced by these dozens of spears accidentally. What Angel Ran is doing now is to instruct the hunters to shrink the circle surrounding the male lion, while trying not to cause any harm to the hunters. Seeing that the battle situation was relatively stable, Angel Ran immediately contacted Angel Lan. "How's the progress on your end, Lan?" "It went very well. Most of the injured sisters on the battlefield have been successfully recovered and have been properly placed on the Sky Blade for treatment." "That's good. The Legion commander has now held back the enemy's high-end combat power. We must take this opportunity to annihilate the remaining male angels and then support the Legion commander." After Angel Ran finished speaking, she recalled the battlefield projection, but her eyebrows never relaxed. The flaming sword and the silver sword clashed together, exploding into a brilliant ring-shaped impact. From the picture, it is obvious that Sokka has the advantage. His eyes widened, the muscles in his arms bulged slightly, and the sword pressed the flaming sword against Binghua. If you take off Binghua's face armor at this moment, you can see that her face, which was originally beautiful and filled with a touch of heroism, has become a bit ferocious and twisted at this moment. The bitten corners of his mouth and the dark eyes filled with faint bloodshot eyes all showed that Binghua's current condition was very abnormal. Ignoring the flaming sword that was pushed back, the shield that had been held tightly in his left hand was struck directly forward with a heavy shield blow. A faint force field on the shield shook, instantly forcing Sokka back. Binghua also took a few steps back to relieve some of the muscle strain on his body caused by the previous battle. At the beginning, Binghua was able to suppress Sokka with his swift and precise swordsmanship. But as Sokka adapted to Binghua's swordsmanship mode, and the previously invaded flame-level energy was suppressed by the gene engine in his body, it soon became Sokka suppressing Binghua. He let out a heavy breath, and the blood that was a little bit high was temporarily suppressed. Looking at Sokka on the other side, some wounds on the body were no longer bleeding. Binghua felt that he would be the first to be unable to survive like this. Connect to the built-in computing cloud of the flaming sword, introduce the stellar energy drive algorithm, and the default stellar energy concentration time is 3 minutes. The shield in his left hand disappeared, and then the sword and gun that had been thrown out appeared. Binghua had a sword and gun in one hand and a flaming sword in one hand, making a posture with unknown meaning. Looking at Binghua's appearance and the heavy armor covered with slashes and scratches on her body, and listening to the unfavorable battle situation reported by his men, a tic-tac-toe gradually appeared on Sokka's forehead. Sokka felt that he was wrong, very wrong. He should not have been fighting with Binghua, a turtle shell, from the beginning. Now the Angel Legion brought to support Halstar has suffered heavy losses and is in danger of being wiped out. But what did he do as the Legion commander? "Woman, you win. I admit that I can't kill you for the time being." Sokka closed his eyes and seemed to have made a lot of determination before saying the above words. Then he turned around and prepared to leave without any nonsense. He wanted to break out with his remaining subordinates. "Do you want to leave before the winner is decided?" When Binghua saw Sokka turning around, he flew towards the hole above their heads, as if he wanted to leave the flagship, which was on the verge of being scrapped. Throwing out the flaming sword in his hand, Binghua held the handle of the sword and gun with both hands and hit the falling flaming sword like a baseball. Boom! The terrifying force directly threw the flaming sword into the air, but Saman avoided it by turning aside. The swirling flaming sword was inserted directly into the edge of the battleship's hull. Looking up from Binghua's corner, he could just see the space outside the battleship. Binghua raised his sword and spear and stepped on the ground, rushing towards Sokka in mid-air as fast as he could, and an aura of death arose spontaneously. Avoiding Binghua who was charging towards him with a gun, Sokka didn't want to get into any more entanglements, so he changed the direction and continued flying towards the hole above his head. Binghua flew out of a lone line, immediately changed direction to predict Sokka's flight trajectory, and sprinted towards Sokka with all his strength again. After a few times, Sokka was very irritated by Binghua, and his flight was interrupted several times and his speed could not be improved at all. Finally, Sokka was angered by Binghua, who stuck to him like brown candy. The dark energy instantly wrapped the sword, and he turned around and slashed at Binghua, who was charging towards him. When the dark energy exploded and was immediately transformed into extremely terrifying kinetic energy, and the incoming ice flower was sent flying with one strike. Sokka turned around with an angry look on his face slightly red, and his hair floating slightly as if it had escaped the shackles of gravity. Binghua's heart skipped a beat as dark energy went berserk. This was the ultimate state when dark energy was driving it. The dark energy is accurately calculated and distributed in the muscles and bones through the gene engine, but this is like overloading the machine. When the dangerous critical value is reached, this state will be forcibly lifted by the gene engine, and dark energy drive will no longer be possible for a period of time. Sokka flapped his wings, like a predatory falcon, and swooped at the flying ice flower, and then chopped it off with his sword. Like the dull and loud sound of a bell hammer, even with the protection of Pa Jun's armor, Binghua still felt a slight sweetness in his throat, and a gorilla smell filled his mouth. Boom! Creak! Creak! The sound of metal twisting was heard, and some armor plates in the flagship began to twist and collapse due to the force. Sokka had no intention of stopping the attack at all. He cut a piece of metal armor several meters wide, blocking the road, into two pieces with one knife, and then kicked the remaining remains away. The sword in his hand slashed Binghua's helmet mercilessly. Binghua only had time to turn his head, and the metal ground beside his ears split into two halves. Binghua rolled and stood up again, murmuring in his mouth. 1 minute left. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 79. Calculating the time silently, Binghua once again raised his sword and gun and pointed it in the direction of Sokka, as if this could calm him down. At the same time, his peripheral vision scanned the hole where the flaming sword was inserted in the distance. 55 seconds. Binghua muttered silently again, and the sacred coded inscription on the sword and gun in his hand was activated, and a thin layer of dark energy covered the gun body. Binghua shouted proudly, stepped forward, and used his wings as a supplement, stabbing forward with the sword and gun in his hand without retreating. Sokka casually pushed away the spear tip with a knife. At the same time, he leaned forward and dragged the long knife upwards with his right hand. Binghua raised his head and narrowly avoided the pointed tip of the knife. At the same time, he stepped back and turned with the gun in his right hand to make a sweeping sweep. But Sokka crouched down to avoid the sweeping swords and spears, and stabbed Binghua's calf with the knife in his right hand. Binghua's body suddenly tilted to one side, thinking something bad in his heart. Sure enough, Sokka's attack came immediately after, and a big hand slammed Binghua's mask. Then Binghua's vision went black, and then the helmet seemed to collide with something hard, which made her dizzy. Although his head was hit and he was a little dizzy, Binghua instinctively waved his sword and gun with his right hand, but the next moment he was caught by Sokka. Because the hand covering the visor was removed, Binghua finally regained his sight, and saw that he was half lying in a depression, and Sokka was standing in front of him. And his sword and gun was being held tightly by Sokka with one hand, and then Binghua saw Sokka lift his foot and kick him in the chest. Binghua felt a tightness in his chest, and the metal floor behind him was instantly knocked down and collapsed. Because Sokka was holding the sword and gun, Binghua couldn't hold the handle of the gun, and the weapon was taken away by Sokka. Immediately afterwards, Binghua saw Sokka throwing away the sword and gun he had snatched away, Holding the sword with both hands, his muscles slightly bulging, surging dark energy covering the sword, and the shining silver blade reflected in Binghua's eyes. Binghua's pupils instantly shrank to the size of a needle tip, and he blocked the shield on his left arm in front of him as fast as he could. A harsh cutting sound came. Of course, all of this is the sound simulated by the built-in genetic engine of the super warriors in order to better survive and fight in the universe. After all, sound cannot be transmitted in the vacuum of the universe, right? Sokka once and then slashed at the shield covering Binghua's half-body with his sword, making an ear-splitting roar. The continuous impact of hundreds of tons compacted the metal on Binghua's back, and the entire battleship seemed to be shaking and making an overwhelmed creaking sound. The blast of dark energy caused the surrounding metal that was squeezed and upturned to turn red, and the shield held by Binghua was dotted with several clear cuts, while Binghua just remained silent. Holding the shield tightly with both hands, he remained silent. As Sokka roared, he raised his sword high, and all the surging dark energy gathered on the blade and slashed hard. Binghua could no longer hold the shield in his hand, and was directly knocked away. He also crashed through the thick armor layer under him and entered the universe. Binghua groaned, and the momentary exchange of surrounding scenes made her a little dazed, but Sokka squeezed out of the hole with red eyes. Without paying attention to the situation around him, Binghua's consciousness returned and he knew that this was not the time to be in a daze. There was enough time and it was time to end this battle. Binghua turned around and flew towards the huge flagship beside him without hesitation, and Sokka paused for a moment as if he was considering whether to chase after him. But in the end, Sokka gave up and turned around to fly in the opposite direction of Binghua. He wanted to join his subordinates and retreat to Mir Star. He must regroup the army and annihilate this female angel army inside Mir Galaxy. Binghua looked back slightly, and when he saw that Sokka was not chasing him, he immediately held his chest and gasped. His figure in flight seemed a little shaky, but he was still moving firmly in one direction. After Sokka got rid of Binghua's entanglement, he rushed into the battlefield and immediately displayed his terrifying power as a third-generation super soldier. No female angel warrior could survive a single move under him, and even the elite guardian Tien could barely survive 2 rounds. The dark energy on the sword in Sokka's hand was boiling. With a fierce wave of one hand, the body of a female angel warrior who rushed over was split into 2 halves together with the weapon in her hand. No, sisters, stay away from here and don't fight with him. The enemy is something we cannot contend with. The warriors who have been promoted to the 2nd generation will stop him with me. A guardian angel holding a flaming sword shouted quickly, and then rushed forward alone. Sokka's eyes flickered slightly, and with a casual wave of the sword in his right hand, the charging first-level guard angel was slashed backwards. But what made the guardian angel's pupils shrink suddenly was that Sokka's speed was extremely sensitive. He turned around and reached forward with his big hand, and actually grabbed his calf directly. The corner of Sokka's mouth raised cruelly, and the handle of the sword was turned into a reverse grip in his hand. The dark energy ignited and Sokka poured all the anger entangled by the ice flower into the sword, and stabbed it with all his strength. Phew! The silver angel armor was unable to block the sharp blade of the flame-level weapon, and was easily penetrated. The guardian angel's lips were slightly opened, and countless blood droplets splashed around her, accompanied by an unprecedented pain in her abdomen. Compared with her, you are far behind. Sokka pulled out the sword from the female angel's body and commented lightly. Of course she was referring to Binghua. At this moment, several angry shouts came out, and several guardian angels holding flaming swords rushed over at high speed, and together they repelled Sokka. One of the guardian angels immediately held the female angel who was penetrated through the abdomen and quickly backed away. How are you? Don't die so easily. The female angel being held in her arms began to bleed from the corners of her mouth, and her eyes seemed to be about to close, leaving only a small gap exposed. My body feels a little cold, but my abdomen is so hot, as if it was burned by a flame. After hearing this, the guardian angel holding her looked down and saw that at the penetrating wound on her abdomen, there was a burning dark energy like a flame that was constantly flashing. "Hold on, don't say anything yet, I'll send you back to Heavenly Blade for treatment right now." As he spoke, he started to flap his wings vigorously and passed through the debris on the battlefield, but the angel in his arms kept talking to himself. "I knew a long time ago, I might have such a day, but I don't regret it. I am very lucky, to be the guardian angel of the Legion Commander. This makes my ordinary life become extraordinary. Promise me, to protect the Legion Commander and see for me, the day when what we have been pursuing comes true. Let me say one last thing, the Heavenly Sword Legion is invincible." While speaking, she used her last strength to try to open her eyes that were about to close, wanting to take another look at the world. A smile appeared on her face, and then it froze on her face. This is one of the many female angel warriors who sacrificed their lives, and it will not be the last one. At this moment, the female angel who is holding her and flying to the sky blade has tears pouring out of her eyes behind her mask, but she can't stop it. As soon as it floated out of the eye socket, it turned into condensed ice beads and hit the face in the gravityless vacuum environment. At the original male angel's flagship position not far from Sokka, a scorching orange light suddenly appeared and began to flicker, becoming brighter and brighter, like the rising sun. When the burning orange light spot pulled in, it was Binghua holding a flaming sword that shone as brightly as a star. "I'm back." Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 80. Sokka was waving the sword in his hand and was fighting with more than a dozen first-level guard angels. The many male angels behind him also regained their morale and attacked the defense line laid down by the angels. "Don't be chaotic. We must not let the male angels break through when we reorganize the defense line. The enemy's high-level combat power is handed over to the guardian angels. The sisters must block the remaining male angels." Angel Rand shouted in the dark communication channel. She pressed her hands on the platform in front of her. Her lips were slightly open to reveal the silver teeth that were tightly bitten together. Her blue eyes were staring at the projection. Battle situation. In the picture, Sokka is facing the siege of more than a dozen first-level guardian angels. Judging from his expression, he copes with it very easily. Blocking the flaming sword with one strike, Sokka knew there were 3 female angels charging behind him without looking back. He kicked the female angel in front of him away with one kick. The wings on his back encouraged her body to move to the right, and continued to fly upside down for several meters in a Z-shaped trajectory. She avoided the swords of 5 female angels who were staggering and thrusting from all directions. Then Sokka quickly rushed forward, slashing down his sword quickly, and was blocked by the flaming sword as expected, but this was not the end. Sokka pressed the sword in his hand, and then suddenly released it. The arm holding the sword dropped, and then he quickly raised it to deflect the flaming sword blocked by the female angel. Then there was a flash of silver sword light, and a long and narrow wound appeared on the chest of the second-generation guardian angel. But the most Sokka could do was retreat, because the other guardian angels had already reacted and rushed over desperately. Sokka avoids not because he is afraid of these guardian angels, but because these guardian angels have flaming swords driven by dark energy in their hands. Although the dark energy is very weak, it can still cut through the armor on his body easily. If he is not careful, he may be hacked to death by random swords, which will make Sokka embarrassed. I guess when someone mentions me in the future, they will say, "What's there to say about that idiot who was hacked to death by a group of women with swords?" As soon as Sokka retreated, the guardian angel who had been severely injured was immediately dragged away by his companions. This situation has happened many times, but it still made Sokka snort in displeasure. Just when the guardian angels were about to continue their attack and hold back Sokka, they all received a message from the Legion commander. "I'm back, all of you, stay away." The guarding angels were stunned for a moment, and even their original intention to besiege Sokka was paused. Then they raised their heads and scanned the surroundings, and finally their eyes stayed above their heads. The orange light spot became brighter and brighter, and then they saw the figure reflected in the light. I saw that Binghua had taken off his helmet at this moment, his long black hair flying freely on the back of his head, and his dark eyes were scorchingly illuminated by the orange light on the flaming sword. Sokka naturally saw this scene, and was stunned for a moment. Then he opened his eyes wide and defended with his knife, because Binghua's speed was too fast, and he could no longer dodge by the time he reacted. Binghua let out a loud roar, and aimed the flaming sword wrapped in rich burning orange light at Sokka, using all his strength to incite his wings to accelerate, like a flaming meteor with a long tail. Boom! A ring of energy exploded, and Sokka was pushed backwards by the rushing ice flower and flew backwards quickly, passing over an angel and metal debris along the way. The extremely violent stellar energy on the flaming sword seemed to explode at the next moment, seriously injuring the two of them. But Binghua was not afraid at all. She just opened her lips and let out a continuous shout, opened her eyes wide and pushed Sokka to fly forward. I don't know how far they flew, I just know that it's far away, and the original battlefield has been left far behind by the two of them. Sokka did not dare to move the blocking sword because he was afraid that the flaming sword covered with violent star energy would touch him, and the high temperature transmitted through the blade already made his palms feel hot. Boom! Sokka's back hit the wreckage of a 100-meter battleship. Even with the physique of a third-generation super soldier, he was suffocated by the impact. Die! Binghua spoke for the first time from before to now, and it was still in the form of a roar. Binghua's calculations to maintain the star energy drive suddenly stopped. The gathered star energy on the flaming sword suddenly became extremely bright and dazzling, and then exploded instantly. Binghua only had time to direct the direction of the explosion as far forward as possible. The extremely hot energy that can turn everything into ashes spreads, and the first one to bear the brunt is Sokka. Sokka felt an extremely sharp tingling sensation all over his body, and his eyes instantly fell into darkness. The silver plate armor on his body began to turn red and melted into liquid after a few seconds. Binghua was also blown away by the exploding star energy, and the flaming sword in her hand no longer knew where to fly. She could only mobilize her maximum computing power to drive the spreading star energy to move away from her surroundings. After a few seconds, the raging burning orange light dissipated, revealing a space where the space was slightly twisted and filled with balls of burning red metal solution. Binghua's first thought was to look for Sokka and see if he was still alive. Flailing his wings, Binghua covered his chest with constant stinging pain with one hand and flew into the area where the star could explode just now. The wreckage of the giant battleship that was originally 100 meters long has now been mostly melted by the extremely terrifying high temperature. Inside, the ice blossoms found the miserable-looking Sokka. His whole body was scorched, and his originally fierce face was now as wrinkled and full of cracks as cooled coke. In addition, with the dark eye sockets and the bald head, no one can connect it with the third-generation warrior Sokka who killed everyone among the female angels dozens of seconds ago. Even in this state, Sokka is not dead. As long as he receives adequate treatment, he will still be alive and kicking after a while. After all, stellar energy is not a flame-level weapon that is extremely restrained against super warriors. It cannot destroy the super warrior's genes, so it can at most seriously injure the super warrior, but cannot kill him unless it can be burned to ashes. Binghua looked at Sokka with extremely cold eyes, without any sympathy, and raised his slightly trembling right hand. As the space was slightly distorted, a dagger more than 30 centimeters long, with a sword body covered with exquisite lines and a blue prismatic crystal on the sword crocodile was carried out. This was the flaming dagger given to her by Binghua's father. Binghua had stabbed Sokka with it before, but he pulled it out and threw it away. But Binghua has already completely solved the data of this dagger. No matter how far it is thrown, as long as you know its micro-wormhole transport code, you can transport it again. With a pop, Binghua used the maximum strength he exerted at the moment to pierce the flame-level dagger into the heart of Sokka, who had turned into humanoid charcoal. I saw Sokka's body twitching violently for a few seconds, and then finally calmed down. Binghua let go of her right hand holding the dagger, and lay back with her eyebrows slightly closed. She felt extremely tired, not mentally, but physically. At this moment, Binghua just wanted to lie here. The whining coming from all over her body made her not want to move. It was actually quite good to just float freely in this silent space. From an inverted perspective, Binghua saw hundreds of female angel warriors flying in from a distance, and a smile that eclipsed the surrounding space could not help but appear on their tired faces. Starting from tomorrow, 2 updates will be resumed.